Indianapolis has 2 bus rapid transit lines, and will ultimately have 3 bus rapid transit lines. Indy could have had a 4th bus rapid transit line, or possibly even light rail. But instead of building that, a trail was built. I'll explain the story of that trail, and why I think building a trail instead of transit was a regrettable decision. So for some background, there is an abandoned rail corridor in central Indiana. It was a corridor formerly used by the New York, Chicago, and St. Louis Railroad. There is a desire to use that corridor for something useful, and that is a fair desire. One proposal for the abandoned corridor was building some form of transit, whether it be bus rapid transit or light rail. The other was for a trail, which is what we have now on the corridor. That rapid transit proposal was dubbed the Green Line. It would have connected downtown Indianapolis to the rapidly growing suburbs of Fishers and Noblesville by way of the abandoned rail corridor. And when I say rapidly growing, I mean that it is really, really rapid. Like, as recently as when my parents were kids, Fishers was a small town of just over 600 people. And now, it's a city of about 100,000 people. As for Noblesville, it has gone from having about 7,500 people in 1970 to a population approaching 10 times that for the 2020 census. These 2 cities continue to grow. And despite that, there is 0 mass transit connection between these 2 cities and Indianapolis. That's where the Green Line would have been helpful, for it would have connected these rapidly growing suburbs northeast of Indy to downtown Indy. And that connection would have been rather direct as well. Ridership projections were quite significant for this Green Line, with up to 10,000 daily riders expected. Granted, ridership projections should sometimes be taken with a grain of salt, as the projections for the Red Line bus rapid transit in Indy ended up being higher than the actual ridership of the line. Though, given how rapidly growing Fishers and Noblesville are, it's possible that those ridership projections could have been met down the line due to the city's growth, even if it wasn't met right away. And so, we have a proposed rapid transit line to rapidly growing suburbs, as well as an unused former rail line that could be used for the proposed rapid transit. So what was built? A trail. Namely, the Nickel Plate Trail. Now, don't get me wrong, I love walking, and I love walking on trails. But when this trail could have been used instead for an immensely useful light rail or bus rapid transit line, and potentially the busiest transit line in the entire Indianapolis metro area, this just makes me sad. And the reason it makes me sad is that there was a golden opportunity to use this right-of-way for public transit that could have transformed the entire Indy area. And instead, we have a trail. Turning rail into trails may have been appropriate if it were the Fishers or Noblesville of 1970, where Fishers just had a few hundred people and Noblesville had several thousand. But, to state the obvious, it's not 1970, but 2026. This is not a fitting plan for the Indy area of 2026, for the Fishers or Noblesville of 2026. It wasn't even fitting for the Fishers or Noblesville that existed when the decision was to go with trails rather than transit. A decision made about a decade ago, from what I read. And, because this former rail corridor is now taken by a trail, it's unlikely to turn into a transit corridor anytime soon, if ever. After all, ripping up a trail is not exactly a winning platform if you're a politician. What this means is that, if we want public transit heading from Indy to these rapidly growing northeast suburbs, we're stuck with options significantly worse than what you would have had if the trail were used for transit. You could use Binford Boulevard, which also goes northeast. But that leads you to Interstate 69, a highway that doesn't lead you directly to downtown Fishers or to downtown Noblesville. Allisonville Road also isn't a feasible option, despite heading from southwest to northeast, due to it being too narrow to have bus rapid transit. I still want to think of a way to propose rapid transit between downtown Indy and its northeast suburbs, and that will be a video of its own at some point. But man, turning this rail corridor into a trail will certainly make it a challenge for me. This former rail corridor was really the best way to connect downtown Indy to its rapidly growing northeast suburbs by way of public transit. And yet, it was turned into trails. Let this story be a cautionary tale for all considering a conversion of abandoned rail trackage to trails. I'm especially thinking of a particular proposed rails to trails conversion in central Queens, in my hometown of New York City. Namely, the tale is this. If you convert a potentially strong future transit corridor to trails instead of transit, you end up really limiting the options you have later on for improving public transit. The options you end up being left with may be more expensive, less direct, and just not as good overall. Though, speaking of what's happening in central Queens, before ending this video, I should recommend that we donate to the QueensLink organization in New York City, who is fighting to turn abandoned rail trackage in Queens into a central Queens subway line. Some in positions of power would prefer turning this thing into trails, and in the process, ruining a potentially once-in-a-generation opportunity to improve transit connectivity in Queens. And if you live in New York City as well, please sign the petition urging New York City to go with the Central Queens subway, rather than have a trail without rail. I'll try to remember to leave a link to the petition and the place to donate in the video description below. It may be too late to save the rail to trail conversion in Indy, but it is not too late yet to save it in New York City. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on this rail to trail conversion in Indy, let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to also like this video and subscribe to my channel for more content on imagining better mass transit in the United States. Thank you, and have a good day.